Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Managing with Mind and Heart podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Ethan Nash, and with me today,
I am your other co-host.
co-host.
I'm your
Love it.
co-horse. I am your other co-host, Michael Nash.
That's it. We are the co-hosts. Anyways, we got a different type of episode for you today, a special type of episode. And so what you are about to hear is just the audio recording of videos that are on our up and coming, soon to be released Mind and Heart University app. And it's a leadership development course app. We're really excited about it. Mike, just share a little bit about this project.
Yeah, it's been years in the making. This app is going to be used in a lot of different ways. It's going to be available to our organizations to help them with their sustainability practices for all the work and all the skills they've been learning. It's going to contain a lot of resources. It's going to contain discussion questions and guides to this and that and some cool surveys and lots of cool stuff. But mostly, primarily, I should say, it's going to have our whole Managing with Mind and Heart course in video form.
Yep. With worksheets to go along with it, a lot of other different learning aids and tools. Folks, we are excited about this. And I will just say that if maybe after listening to this episode, you are also excited about this. I would encourage you to sign up to go on our mailing distribution list. So once the app is released, you'll get a email about it. So I will link to that in the show notes for you to be able to go do that. And again, what you're hearing is just the audio of what are these videos put together for the course. So I think you'll still get a lot out of this just by listening to the audio. Hope you enjoy it. And yeah, please sign up for the distribution list. We'd love to get the app in your hand and in your pocket.
Yep.
All right, here
Thanks,
we go.
everybody. We're continuing forward with chapter one of Managing with Mind and Heart. We are talking about the manager's mindset. And you'll recall, we are talking about getting six really important things on the radar. And so far, we have one. And before we go back and revisit that, I want to welcome Ethan, my partner, my business partner, my son, the captain of the ship. Ethan, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here. Let's do this.
Yeah, love talking about this stuff, especially with you. It's a lot of fun. So we are putting six things on the radar in this chapter, and the first thing we have on the radar at this point is a growth mindset is a prerequisite for being an effective people leader. Hannah and I spent some time on this. I'd love to wrap you into the conversation just for a moment as we recap. What, in your opinion, are some of the connections here between having a growth mindset and being a good manager? Or we can reverse this. Maybe someone who does not have a growth mindset at all and they're stuck permanently. How might that show up in their leadership? What do you think, Ethan?
Well, thanks for asking me. I have lots of opinions. So
So do I.
my belief is that as a people leader, your behaviors have an outsized impact on your culture, on the team you lead, which we'll talk about more today. And so I think we need to be committed to looking to uncover our blind spots. And our behaviors, there might be behaviors that might be negatively impacting our team, our culture, and we just have to keep an eye on being aware of what those are because of the outsized impact we have. So that's the first thing that comes to mind for me.
Yeah, that's really good. If you're not working on your gaps and your blind spots and you're letting them just kind of be out there, I like the way you said that. It's going to have an outsized impact on everything else at work. That's really true.
Mhm.
Um, if you're not growing as a human, you're not at all going to be committed to anyone else's growth. I think that's a kind of a given.
Mhm.
I think you're probably going to be really defensive if someone tries to give you feedback, if you're kind of not open at all to growth, right?
Yeah, it's really hard to hold the space for other people to grow as well if you're not committed to your personal growth. And I
That's
mean, this is one of your number one mandates as a as a manager is to help people grow and develop. And you're just not going to be able to have the same eye for that if you personally aren't doing the work yourself.
right, right. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's just a little bit of a review, kind of a recap, and let's go forward. We're going to get into the topic of morale, and I'll just start out by asking you, Ethan. And in our workshops, of course, we ask the group this, and we spend lots of time discussing this. What do you get in an organization when you get low morale? What comes with low morale?
Bad things, bad feelings. But I mean, to be real here, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is low performance, right? People are just not going to be wanting to give their all. And, with that, of course, you get something like low quality goes hand in hand with low performance. Low productivity is there. So those are to be the big ones.
Yeah, let's stay there for a minute. That's really good. Low productivity, low quality, less production, less effort. What's the connection between low morale and low effort? Why are those two things related?
Well, it's engagement, right? It's I in a low morale environment, I'm not going to choose to volunteer my heart and volunteer my mind, right?
Exactly right. Let's do the quote. This is it. This is the one. This is Stephen Covey's quote. We encourage managers to memorize this. It's a little bit of a mantra for us. I would say it's foundational to our work with organizations. You can pay people for their back, you can pay people for their hands, but they volunteer their hearts and they volunteer their brains. Basically, if I have low morale, I'm not going to be able to give all that stuff that you can't pay for this stuff, you can't punish for this stuff. I give the stuff because I want to, like extra effort, quality, pride in my work, etc., etc.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can agree that in a low morale environment, there's kind of this mindset of I really don't care. Like you
Right.
said, I'll come to work to do the basics, but you really want me to invest more into a high performing, well functioning culture. I'm probably not going to do that because it doesn't feel great to work here.
Right, right. And in a sense, I can't. I mean, it's just the way we're built. It's the way our brains work. If I'm in low morale, chronic low morale world, right? Uh, I'm not in my prefrontal cortex where I'm being creative and innovative and collaborative. I'm kind of in self-protective mode, right? So for lots of reasons, I'm not going to be able to give all those things that you really kind of want me to give.
Absolutely.
What else? Low morale. I'm gonna say that you're probably gonna have, again, people aren't able to bring their best self. They're gonna probably be in self-protection mode. So you're probably gonna have more behavior issues. You're probably gonna have more, sometimes I hate to be snarky, but junior high behaviors. You're gonna have more issues to have to deal with as a manager because people aren't really showing up in their best possible way.
Yeah, and what comes with that is, lack of teamwork is a big key there. And I mean, it's going to be everything from, more politics, again, some of that more kind of negative behavior, a little bit more self-centeredness. Like,
Right.
why would I engage in these relationships and collaboration and coordination with others if I'm really not interested in volunteering my heart and mind? So you get self-centeredness, kind of everybody more for themselves. We tend to be as humans primed with selfishness in a sense, and so this just becomes exaggerated in these type of environments.
Yeah, that's really good. That teaming issue is key. It's really hard to be collaborative when I'm worried about protecting my own self, right?
Mhm.
Um, this whole thing is going to obviously trickle out to customer service and the people that we support as an organization. I remember working with an organization one time and they were really struggling with customer service as an issue and they were doing all these customer service training programs and it just wasn't effective over time and it was because at least in that case they hadn't paid any attention to how it felt to be at work for these folks. These people who worked there had low morale and you just can't really give better or more than what you're getting is my opinion.
Mhm. Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. You know, one thing comes to mind for me as well is just the kind of lack of buy-in, lack of investment, which you alluded to earlier. I mean, it's just again this idea of to buy in, to invest, especially in a new change or something like that. I mean, that takes cognitive bandwidth, effort. We're
Right.
just not going to be willing to extend that type of energy to the same degree when we have a low morale environment. And
Yeah.
can I also just throw in there absenteeism? We know that absenteeism tends to go up as morale goes down.
Yeah, that's really true. Say something about that. There's the
The auto
car. Yes. Talk about
Oh,
that.
okay, yeah. So there's an auto manufacturing facility down in California. I think this was in the early 90s. And they were known for having some of the lowest morale in the industry. And so absenteeism got so bad that they couldn't even produce cars on Mondays and Fridays. So 2 out of the 5 work days, they couldn't even do what they're supposed to do here. And whenever we bring this up in the workshops, you get this look like, yeah, we can see why people would just find more reasons not to come to work, to call in sick. And by the way, research also shows that there's a correlation between low morale environments and actual people's physical health. So some of this absenteeism is not like I'm going to pretend I'm sick because I don't want to come to work. Might be some of that, but actually people's health is
It,
affected.
we are whole people. We're mind, body, spirit, and low morale in this place that you spend more than half your waking hours and you don't like being there. It gets inside of you, right? It gets inside your body. It gets inside your healing mechanisms. It absolutely
Mm-hmm.
just it impacts every part of your life. And we bring it home with us. It impacts our happiness in our life overall.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a really kind of depressing conversation, by the way.
Yeah, it's kind of sad in our workshops. We'll often start the day with this, and I usually stop and say, "I promise we're going to get happy soon." This is a pretty sad way to start, but let's stay on it for a few more minutes.
Okay.
I was surprised years ago when I found out that low morale was also connected to not just mistakes, which I kind of get that. Again, I'm not volunteering my heart and my brain. I'm not as careful. I don't really care about quality as much, right? But it also connects to actual safety incidents. That low morale tends to produce more dangerous situations and people get hurt. And I remember hearing that and thinking, okay, that still doesn't
Mhm.
make sense to me. I don't like my job, so I'm going to get hurt. But I get it, right? What's the connection? What's the connection, do you think, between low morale and safety incidents at work?
Well, we're back to our golden egg here, which is coming back to engagement. I'm not engaged as much in the work, so therefore I might be cutting corners, skipping steps, not having teammates' backs as much when we see a safety issue, not paying attention as much, and all of these directly affect actual safety incidents in the workplace.
Exactly. Yep. As a side note, I think there's also probably in some cases an unwillingness or a fear to report problems, to talk
Mhm.
about mistakes we've made, because it's not unusual for low morale, a low morale work environment to be paired with a low psychological safety work environment, which we'll talk about later, of course.
Yeah, agreed. Well, let me throw one more out there, at least for myself. And we probably alluded to this when we talked about productivity and performance, but let's just call it what it is. Costs go up,
Mm,
profits go down in a low morale environment. I mean, the research is very clear on this. Gallup has been doing research on this for decades, and Gallup shows that engaged employees increase profitability by
mm,
up to
mm,
21%.
mm.
Right? They reduce absenteeism by 41%. They decrease turnover by 52%. Right? And all of these impact our bottom line.
Wow, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. Wow, morale really matters. It's really important.
It does.
What do you get when you get high morale? And I know that sounds like a really redundant question, the opposite, right, of what we just said, but
Hmm.
let's turn the channel here and get more happy. What do you get when you get high morale?
Well, I like getting happy here. So,
Let's do it.
I guess I kind of led right into this with the research by Gallup. Again, higher profitability, reduced absenteeism, decreased turnover, especially decreased turnover of the people that you really want to stay. So those are some big ones to start with. What else though?
Yeah, the turnover piece was interesting. And we were talking about low morale. You mentioned absenteeism. Of course, also you just lose people. And
Mm,
sadly, it's not always the people that you want to lose. It's you kind of have the wrong turnover. Sometimes it's the people that you wish would leave are the ones who stay, and the people that you should stay are the ones who leave.
hmm
There are people out there, you and I both know this, that aren't happy unless they're unhappy, and they're
mm,
probably not going to have high morale no matter where they work. And they might be more willing to stay put in a low morale work environment. I'm home. This is cool.
yeah,
I
yeah.
like the drama. Here, though, high morale, maybe the people that you hope will stay are going to stay. And maybe the people that you hope will either go, or better yet, maybe stay and change, maybe be open to feedback, maybe develop and grow.
hmm Yeah, agreed.
I'll add in high morale. You're much more likely to get innovation, creativity, collaboration, all those, again, beautiful things that you can't really pay for or punish for. People give that because they want to.
Right. Coming back to people are more willing to volunteer their heart, volunteer their brains into the work, and that's really how you get innovation and creativity, like you said. I'd
Yep.
also put out a big one, which is the organization's reputation, or even your particular team's reputation.
Oh, yeah.
Employees are your most powerful recruiting and marketing force, and I'm a strong believer in that.
Mm.
And they're going to have a story that they're going to share with the world, not necessarily post it on Facebook and things like that, but through their connections, through their family, through their friends. What is that story going to be for your team, your organization? And this can dramatically impact the success of an organization when people are saying, "Hey, this is a great place to work." Like any organizations, we have problems we have to work through, but it feels pretty good to work here on a day-to-day basis.
Wow. That's really powerful. Yeah, I sometimes will say to in my workshops, newsflash, did you know that people talk about work outside of work? They all
Mhm.
do, right? Everyone does. What do you want them to be saying? And that's awesome. When they're out there saying good things about their boss and about their organization, that's your best recruiting tool. I love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, any last thoughts? Any other kind of cool things that we tend to get, or at least more likely to get when we have high morale?
I mean, I'll just come back to the equal opposite of your point earlier, which is customer service. Right? People are when they feel pretty good about where they work, when they're engaged in that way, you don't necessarily have to, provide a whole ton of customer service training. Maybe
Right.
you do, but really people are just going to genuinely show up in a way that they want to help, they want to provide a good service. And again, all of this impacts, if we need to make the business case for this, all of this directly impacts an organization's bottom line.
Yeah, yeah. Happy people want to help people, right? And if
Mm,
I'm spending all my bandwidth keeping myself safe and trying to be happy when I'm not going to be able to reach out and care that much about people. It's not, and if I do, it's going to not look genuine. So you're
mhm.
spot on. You're spot on.
I do want to add one more if that's okay.
Oh, please.
Since I ended on, you know, the profitability and the business case for that. I also want to make the case that's a bit more important to me personally, which is employee well-being. Um, you get your employees of this organization actually have better well-being, health, mental health, and I mean I know for both of us that's really important, right?
Mhm.
You to actually have a workplace that you can contribute to healthier human beings. I
Yep.
mean, that's what I think gets a lot of managers up in the morning, and you can have that impact with a high morale environment.
Yep. That reminds me of our introduction to this series. As managers, we're going to help our organization succeed, but we're also going to help people have better lives. It's a higher calling. I'm glad you reminded us of that, Ethan.
Hmm
In the workshops, we will at this point put people into small groups, and we will ask them to brainstorm together what are all the factors that contribute to high morale. And we get tons of answers. And in fact, on average, I think we usually get around 40. We get everyone back together and everybody calls out stuff. And at one point, I was writing them down, usually around 40 things, right? And people are going to talk about. Let's just list a few. What you've heard in your workshops, Ethan. People talk about autonomy. They'll talk about a boss who cares. They'll talk about the ability to influence decisions. What else?
Hmm.
What do you hear in your workshops here?
I hear, you know, managers and all people involved giving good feedback, right? Giving
Hmm.
constructive feedback to each other, willing to give the feedback and receiving it well, feeling included. People that are, organizations that are making an effort for people to feel like they can belong here is a big one. And the last one I'll put out for now is just um, there's accountability, right? Accountability that goes along with all of that, right? Like, I mean, how many of you would agree that when management is not holding people accountable for their performance or behaviors, that can impact other people's morale?
For
So
sure.
those are the ones that I hear come up probably most frequently.
Yep. Yep. I hear the same. I hear praise and recognition. We hear availability of the manager. We hear coworkers that are easy to get along with.
Mhm.
We just get just a huge list, and it varies a little bit workshop to workshop, but not much. It's pretty much the same 40 things. And so then we mentioned that it's time to get back into like what does the research tell us, right? We've kind of used our common sense and created this big list of all the things that we think creates high morale. What's the research telling us? And so we're going to break this down into four categories. In general, this is what, if we look at all the different research out there, this is what the research is telling us in terms of where we get high morale. Now, we made up the numbers, we made up the percentages. There's no piece of research out there that says 5% and 70%. But we've kind of stepped back and thought about the ratios of what we're hearing and what we're reading, and this is pretty much what it looks like. So let's walk through these. I'll share the first one. Can we agree that there's got to be a little bit at least of individual responsibility for morale? What do you think about that, Ethan?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at some level, we hold some responsibility, some autonomy for our own morale, right? Our own whether we're attributing that to our own mindset, our whatever that might be. But yes, I would agree that that's at least somewhat of a factor here.
Yeah, it's there's I said in my snarky comment before, there's going to be people out there that aren't going to be happy unless they're unhappy, and they're never going to have high morale. And there's probably, I mean, not probably, there's people out there that could be happy anywhere. They could work in the worst place and they could be happy, and they're annoying, but they're out there, right? They're real, and they're the ends of the bell curves, though, right? They're not you and me probably, because most everyone's morale is impacted by work. Now, I've gotten pushback on this years ago. I was had a series of workshops where several times people looked at that and said, "I don't agree. It's way more than that. We are responsible for our own happiness." I truly believe that. And I'm able now to say I get that. I'm with you. I agree with you. But here's the thing. Look at the two words in the middle of the diagram here, right? We're talking about workplace morale. We're not talking about personal happiness. And if we were talking about personal happiness, Ethan, let's talk about what the research shows about personal happiness.
Yeah, generally across several bodies of research, this is what it appears to be. But our individual outlook is probably somewhere around 60% of our personal happiness. And of course, genetics plays a factor here. So we got maybe some nature and nurture in terms of our personal happiness. Let's acknowledge that. And then, at the same time, maybe 10%, 9% or so is our circumstances, kind of the right here and now, like what this looks like for us. And then let's reserve at least 1% for the great things in life, like coffee and wine and chocolate.
Hmm.
So
That,
gotta have a
that,
call out to that.
yep. I'm going to put bourbon in that list.
Uh-huh.
So, um, we're not talking about personal happiness. We're talking about workplace morale, and there's a bit of overlap. Absolutely. Like, let's call that 5%, but it's not the same thing, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Ethan, what's the next area?
We'll call the next area, roughly around 10% is the work, as in and the actual work itself that we're doing in the organization. And again, this one is also maybe a bit counterintuitive. We're saying, hey, only 10%, but it's still important. And so let's maybe take a little bit of a deep dive on this one. So there are four ways the work impacts morale. And Mike, why don't you start us off?
All right. Well, I like what I do. That's kind of the more intuitive piece. I just really like this thing that I found myself doing for more than half my waking hours. Of course, that's going to impact my morale.
There's also what we'll call my work matches my skill set. So we call a task person fit. Like the work I'm doing, it actually kind of matches my personality, my skills, my interests. Like there's some overlap with that in the work.
And then we're going to dig into the challenge competency continuum. This is the idea that for me to be happy at work, I want to find this sweet spot, at least for me, between being challenged and being competent. And meaning, if I was really far over on the challenge side, like too far over there, it's
Mhm.
likely I'm going to feel overwhelmed. I'm going to feel stressed. I'm going to not be able to go home at night and feel like I accomplished my job. I'm going to be struggling quite a bit. And how might it feel, Ethan, if I was way over on the competent side?
Bored,
Yeah,
perhaps,
yeah,
maybe even a
exactly.
little apathetic if we get to that point. Feeling like I'm also not accomplishing anything at the end of the day because it's either too easy or I'm not challenged enough, right? I don't have
Yeah.
to use my brain very much.
Yeah, and this is a little bit of a preview. Uh, in when we get into chapter two, we're going to talk about one-on-ones, and a little bit of a preview here. This is a great series of questions that you can ask an employee. Where are you on the challenge competency continuum? Where would you like to be? Right? Because we're not all going to be comfortable in the same spot. And then if those two things don't align, there's obviously this great third question. How can I help you get there?
Mhm. Yeah. And what we find is that, most people prefer to be somewhere right in the middle of challenged and
Right.
competent, but everybody's different. And what kind of the high performance research would indicate is that when people are performing at their highest level, you're maybe slightly leaning towards the challenge side of things. But again, have these conversations with each of your employees because everybody's different.
Right. Good. Number four, Ethan.
Well, the work feels important. Like I actually feel like I'm doing good in the world. And this doesn't have to mean, we're curing cancer or anything like that, but just figuring out that, hey, there is some purpose to what I do. I'll give you a quick story here. So they did this study with bus drivers, and first they spoke to the bus drivers before they did any experiments, and they found that these particular kind of urban bus drivers were had pretty low levels of meaning in their work. They didn't see the importance of it. And the researchers went out and got real testimonials of from their customers, right? From the people that were riding their bus. And these things were things like, hey, I'm a single mother and you're the reason that I can get to and from my job to support my family. Hey, you're taking me to school, every day. And this is the reason I'm getting my education is thanks to you. You make a comfortable environment for me when I tend not to have a very comfortable environment at home. And 6 months later, 12 months later, their sense of meaning and purpose in their job was greatly increased. And so to me, this is just an example of, generally speaking, there's meaning and purpose in people's jobs. Part of our job as a manager is to help people connect the purpose to their job.
Wow. That's really well said. And I hadn't heard that study before. That's really cool. Thanks, Ethan.
Hmm.
Awesome. The third category, we're going to give this 15%-ish, is the people I work with. And I'm not going to spend time on this at this point, other than just to remind us that, of course, the folks I hang out with are going to impact me. Their responsibility level, their ability to not be slackers, but do their work, the way they treat me, the respect they show me, the camaraderie we feel. This is a big deal. And at times this can feel like it can really spike. I mean, you might have experienced that one coworker that can really make coming to work really hard. So, we're not going to say this is always at an even 15%, but in general, overall, it is a factor in morale.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when they look at the highest, kind of the most engaged teams, which also, by the way, correlates with the highest performing teams, they find consistently that one of the things people say they have is, I have a friend at work. I have a
Mhm.
good friend at work. So
Right.
that's a reason it impacts morale.
Cool. All right, Ethan, let's take it away. Let's talk about this big green circle. What are we talking about here?
Well, the big one is management or leadership, right? And again, um, most exiting employees are not necessarily quitting their job, they're quitting their managers. And so
Yep.
this is the big one, the holy grail.
If you take that list of 40 factors that our small groups come up with in the workshop, I'll often ask them to do a little bit of back of the napkin math. Look at that list that we came up with. What percentage of those items on that list could fit here in the green circle? And it's almost always at 90%, actually. Like pretty much almost everything they said is heavily influenced by leadership, right? And in fact, you can even borrow some percentage points from some of the other circles, right? That coworker, for example, that's been being a jerk for 3 years. Well, I'm annoyed at the coworker, but who else am I not happy with, right? Who should have been doing something about that? That has to do with accountability, right? The work, that certainly can be influenced quite a bit by managers, including what you were saying, Ethan, managers helping me see my purpose or the mission in my work. So this is bottom line what we're talking about here. This is the point, right? Is that morale not only really matters, it's really on us as managers to create the kind of work environment that entices people to volunteer their hearts and volunteer their brains. Now, who are we talking about here? Ethan, are we talking what level of management? There's lots of managers, lots of leaders. Who are we talking about?
My view is that we are primarily talking about people's direct manager, their direct supervisor. But of course, there's other levels of leadership that are going to impact morale. But primarily, one's direct manager.
Yeah, it's tricky because again, the research does point to that. It's and that's something I want to I quite often want to remind people in our workshops. This we really are talking about the place where you have the most locus of control. We're talking about direct managers. That's where the impact comes from. Now, I would say that's probably 60-70% of it right there. We also have to give a fair percentage to all the other leaders in that organization because it's the executive team, it's upper management that creates and supports vision and culture and mission and supports the managers and their morale and
Mhm.
creates the kind of environment where people feel like they're safe psychologically from the very top. So it's all leaders. We don't want to let anyone off the hook here. We want everyone to be challenged to think about their role in creating the high morale work environment. But I'm going to circle back. Yeah, it's direct level management that is the most significant.
Yeah, agreed.
So we have this really simplistic, overly simplistic, but it's not a bad thing, right? To look at this in real simple terms. It's this morale equation. Skilled managers equals high morale equals all that cool stuff that you can't pay for and you can't punish for. This is again overly simplified, but it's also profound. And it's something that not every manager, not every leader understands. I was working years ago. I was vetting a client who was vetting us. We were talking about working together at some point, and I was taking a tour of the organization, and he showed me their staff manual. And in the staff manual, there's a section called Employee Responsibilities. And I'm not even kidding. The first item under Employee Responsibilities said, Employees shall have high morale. Shows a pretty profound misunderstanding about what it is and where it comes from, right? Morale comes from managers. So, what are we talking about? We spent all this time talking about morale. We haven't defined it, actually. We've talked about where it comes from. We've talked about what it produces. We've talked about what happens if we don't have high morale. What answers do you get in the workshops, Ethan, at this point, when you ask people to stop and come up with a definition? Do you recall?
I hear things. kind of alluding back to personal happiness again. It's
Hmm.
just a good kind of recentering point. It's people's well-being,
Mhm.
people's attitude, people's mood.
Mhm.
I also hear things like we hear a lot of it's a result of having,
Yes.
a direction all in it together.
Yeah.
I often hear those type of things.
That happens in my workshops too. Often they have trouble answering that, but so instead they'll go to all the things that result from it or all the things that create it. It's kind of surprisingly simple what we're talking about here, right? Literally what we're saying, how it feels in general to work here. That's
Hmm.
morale, right? And the word feel is right in here, which can make people a little wary of this, right? It's a touchy-feely thing, sort of thing. We are creatures that are absolutely driven by how we feel, right? That's kind of the starting point for us as humans, right? And if it doesn't feel good, if it doesn't feel safe, if I don't feel respected, I can't invest my mind and my heart.
Yeah, agreed.
So let's get back to our radar page. In your notebook, you'll flip back to that page. And we have already put on our notebook, I mean, in our on our radar page, this first concept that a growth mindset is a prerequisite for effective people leading. Let's add number two. Before we do that, again, I'm going to encourage you to memorize these. We're going to go through all six of these here in chapter one. When you're on your way to work in the morning, you're probably thinking about tasks and phone calls and jobs, and that's great. I'm not trying to replace that, but we want to add to that because we believe it's a game changer. If you can remember these six kind of growth mindset concepts about what it means to be an effective manager. So again, a growth mindset is a prerequisite, and the one we're going to add now, morale really matters, and it's mostly my job.
That's great. And I would make one edit to this, which is morale really, really matters.
Okay, okay, thank you. Morale really, really matters. Thank you, Ethan. And it's mostly my job.